Hello, and welcome to the EastWest Ministry of Rock Library. I'm David Earle, and I'll be your host as we explore these heavy, beastly sounds. Doug Rogers and Nick Phoenix decided they wanted a sound library dedicated to rock. They had already established EastWest and Quantum Leap together in the 90s. Then in 2006, they purchased the legendary Cello Studios, which was formerly United Western Recorders. This was the perfect time for them to put those studios to the test. The Ministry of Rock is a collection of top-shelf instruments that were recorded with fantastic vintage and modern gear. The basses, drums, and guitars are a specially curated lot of the finest instruments out there. Basses from Fender, Kabuki, Music Man, and Spector, guitars from Fender, Gibson, and Ibanez, drums from Gretsch, Ludwig, and Ayat. It's not Ayati, it's Ayat. The amps are no joke either. The amps are from Ampeg, Ashdown, Crank, Bogner, and Marshall. Ministry of Rock gives us a lot of flexibility to the library, allowing for a lot of mix and match tone combinations. There's also great scripting going on in the background, including auto legato detection, legato scripts, round-robin articulations, and repetition detection. All of this in a 20-gigabyte library of awesome. So let's dive in and have a listen to what the library has to offer. First things first, let's go up to the browser. So I'll go up to the Play Engine and click on the Browser tab. As you can see, the Ministry of Rock is separated into three folders. We've got basses, drums, and guitars. In the basses, we're given two Fender basses, a Kabuki, Music Man, and a Spector Bass. You'll note that they have Elements and Master. When you load the master, all of the articulations for that instrument load up automatically. When you go to Elements, essentially what happens is it loads up all of the articulations, but in the player, you'll have to choose which articulations are going to be active. When you choose the master, you'll see key switches on the lower left-hand side in blue that allow you to switch between different articulation types for whatever instrument you happen to have selected. The library is fairly easy to navigate. When you get to the guitars, you'll note that some are leads and some say PC. The PC instruments are usually chugs and rhythm instruments. You'll also find, if we go to like the Gibson J160, there's a chords, master, and elements. So each of the key switches in the chords is going to give us a different chord type. Now let's check out the player real quick. In the player, on the left-hand side, we're given some effects. We have delay, we have our round-robin reset, we have reverb, a filter. On the right-hand side, we have an amplitude envelope, and then we're also given ADT. This is automatic double tracking. Essentially, it's emulating what it's like to take the same material, record it onto another tape machine, and that tape machine's natural wow and flutter will make it sound as though you've tracked the same instrument again, even though you're playing exactly the same instrument. If you take an instrument and you were to take two tracks of that instrument, put it on the left and the right side, and just slip them in time, that's a different effect. When you're doing ADT, you're actually including both pitch and time modulation so that it sounds really rich and beautiful. It has a really neat sound. Up here on the stereo doubling, this is more like the traditional Haas effect, where we're just delaying the two sides. What gets interesting is when we get up here to the channel source, because we can choose from mono from the left side, mono from the right side, swap the left and right side, or go mono. This gets really interesting when we have something like a guitar that was recorded with a Marshall amp on the right side and a Bogner amp on the left side. We're able to either isolate those individual amplifiers or blend them together, depending on what we want to do. Down below, we have our MIDI settings, we have our CPU info, we have our host MIDI port settings, and then, as we saw before, articulations. We do have output settings for this particular instrument, but your outputs are generally a little better managed when you go to the mixer. So when we have the mixer here, and of course we have an effects section that gives us our SSL channel strip with convolution reverb, and a bus compressor, which is very cool stuff and allows you to further shape the sounds. Now, what's interesting is a lot of the sounds are sort of shaped already to sound really good on their own, but you can go in there and you can tweak them to your heart's content. All right, let's start with the Fender's 5-string bass. So the Fender 5-string, of course, has a very smooth sound, but it has a lot of bite on it too. We have both picked and fingered, and we have different effects. And it's just really nicely recorded. Again, you can come up here and you can pick between the different sides to get the different amplifiers. The 5-string was recorded through a Ampeg and a Ashdown rig. So let's check out the Fender Precision bass. Now, what's interesting about using these basses is that you'll hear that I had open notes and then I had muted notes going at the same time. Or not at the same time, but we were switching between those articulations. So when I'm going to my articulations down below, there's my pick, and there's my fingered. And if you're really slick, you can actually perform with it. I am not yet that slick. Or you can just write them in afterwards and put them in the piano roll. The Precision bass was really popular in funk and rock and blues. It's all over the place. It's one of the most popular basses out there. And I think that the recording that they have on this is fantastic. There's some really interesting tones happening from both the Ashdown side of the rig and the Ampeg side of the rig. Really, really nice. Kabuki. So the Kabuki bass was very popular in the 80s and 90s, and it had a particular bite to it that was really popular for doing things like slapping and all that sort of thing. It was a headless bass, which meant that you strung it up like a Steinberger guitar or a Steinberger bass. It didn't have the big tuning pegs at the top. The tuning was actually done at the bottom of the bass. Japanese created, really interesting tone, and one of the most popular basses of the 80s and 90s. Very, very well made. And as you hear, we have very different tones. If you have a stereo setup or you're wearing headphones, you'll hear very different tones between the left and the right side. You can come up here and play around with doing mono from left or mono from right. So it's pretty fun when you want to mix those together. The Spector Bass. The Spector basses are beautiful. The Spector basses that I've seen have a neck-through body design, really beautiful tone, and both active and passive pickups on a lot of them. I mean, I'm not sure. This is probably a modded bass, but it's really beautiful. And again, it was recorded with 2 different rigs, and it just has a very interesting tone. And really nice growl on it, but it's also very, very tonal and smooth too. Really beautiful bass. There's also a Music Man bass that they include as well. And yeah, you can feel free to go into the library and check it out for yourself. Really good stuff. And I misspelled a yacht. There we go. Not a yachty, which I originally thought that this drum kit was called an Ayati kit. But this is a really nice drum kit. Really good for rock. A very tight sound. So that's fairly dry, and as you can hear, it's got a really tight, punchy sound, really good stuff. The black kit, this is actually best for things like metal. This is the same kit that was used on tour by Metallica. Really nice tone. EastWest has the best snares. Really nicely tuned toms. Awesome kit. This is a vintage Ludwig kit. I believe this is a 1960s kit. Nice open sound. Really love the sound of the hats too on that. Really great kit. The Octopus Kit is an amazing beast. Basically, it's a kit from the 70s by Ludwig that has 9 toms, 3 snares, 2 bass drums. I mean, it's a just fat, huge kit, and it's got some room on it. Kick is bigger than anything. It's amazing. All right, moving on, we get into the guitars. So this is an Ibanez lead guitar, and the leads, I think, are really interestingly scripted. If I use this articulation, it's kind of interesting. It sounds like the beginning to Welcome to the Jungle or something like that. We also have slightly longer. And when you mix them together, you can get kind of an interesting sound. Here's a Gibson J160 acoustic guitar playing chords, and I'm doing chord switching. The different types of chords are being triggered by the articulation switches. Beautifully recorded acoustic guitar, and that's without any of my additional effects on it. That's just how it is out of the box. If we go up to the player, of course, we can set it to mono, or we can get either one of the mics that's happening from the left to the right. That sounds like about 12th fret. Yeah, and that's down in the body. So it's pretty cool. Really neat stereo setup. Beautiful guitar. Now down here we get into our rhythm guitars. This is a Les Paul that is giving us chugs. So chugs are what it sounds like when you mute the guitar immediately after strumming the strings. What I really love about the way that they did the chugs and the rhythm guitar on this is a lot of it's controllable by velocity, so you can actually play it in. When I hit it hard, you can hear it full on. And then the softer I hit it, we get a little bit more low end and a little bit more of that body to the chug. We also have pitchless chugs as well. And it's just, I mean, really dark, incredible, beastly sound. I mean, what I love about this library is the fact that it is so visceral. When I get to the punk sounds, for instance, this is another rhythm section. So what I love is they have it in octaves. So when you play it, you can play it in octaves and get that kind of a thing. But check out this tone. This is a Stratocaster, Fender Stratocaster punk tone that I think is just amazing. pretty fantastic. Yeah, so the amps that were employed in this kind of thing are the Marshall stack and a Bogner amplifier. This really cool tone coming out of all of these electric guitars. Then we have this Tele, and Telecasters are a really special guitar. It's so versatile. It's used in every form of music, from rock to rockabilly to country to jazz. It's an amazingly versatile guitar. And the particular way that they recorded and affected this guitar, I think, is really, it's reminiscent of like the Police from the 80s. That's one tone that you can get out of it. And with the articulation switching that we have going on below, it's just really fun to play, and it's beautiful. Another thing that I wanted to mention is if I go to the drum kits here, you'll note that in the articulations, we have different kicks and snares. And if you want to, duplicate this track, go to the browser, and under drums, see it says elements? So we can actually go in there and we could select out certain elements. And if we want to, we can add a kit, assign it to the same channel, and we can start swapping elements between those kits. And when we do that, then we're still able to play it like a kit. Everything's mapped out on the keyboard correctly. But if we want to, we can go through and mix and match parts of these kits together, different toms, different snares, and that can be a lot of fun and really give you a lot of flexibility to those drum kits. I hope you enjoyed exploring the Ministry of Rock with me. I'd like to leave you with a demo that was created using all the sounds from Ministry of Rock, and I'll see you next time.